Okay, I finished One Dark Window and I need to talk about it because I don't hate it, but I don't think it's very good. One Dark Window, I'm landing at a 2.5 out of 5 stars, 3 on a generous day, which surprised me because it has so much hype and I desperately wanted to love it. One Dark Window is a gothic fantasy with a woman infected by magic living under a brutal regime and magic controlled by tarot light cards, and there may or may not be an entity living in her head that is helping her and kind of not. It's a cool concept, a genuinely cool concept. So let's start with what did work. The vibes were genuinely there. The gothic atmosphere, the nursery rhyme type of storytelling and vibe. The nightmare, the voice in her head is compelling. Anytime it focused on that, you could definitely see some manipulative and psychological kind of mind games going on there, and it was engaging. In regards to the romance, parts of it did work on me as there was a cool kind of going back and forth and teasing that I thought played out pretty well. I think the strongest part of the book was towards the end. The ending kind of ramped up and was really fun. The prose finally got grittier, the tone darkened, it felt darker and less handholdy. And there's a big aura farm moment with a cold line that is said by the main character that absolutely worked on me. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. Overall, I can see people getting swept away with the vibe of the book. Now, what doesn't work? The first 50 to 60% of this book was unbearable for me from a prose standpoint. The writing constantly explains itself. Actions happen and it's followed by explanations of that same action. For example, someone hits someone and it says that they crash into the ground, and then it says, oh yeah, they crash into the ground heavily. Or the main character will do an action and then it'll explain what that action meant when we already understand that from what the gesture was. It felt like the prose didn't trust the reader at all. Later in the book, it also starts repeating itself, especially in regards to the main character's physical pain. The same sensations are described in nearly identical language over and over, and it felt like more of a reminder rather than craft, as it never evolved or had any more impact. The prose does improve toward the end, which almost makes it worse because it proves that this book could have trusted the reader through the entire thing. Now, the pacing is honestly bad. Nothing really gets going or nothing meaningful really happens until the last 40% of the book. And this isn't a slow burn, it's a stall. In the start, there's a lot of atmosphere, a lot of setup, but not a lot of irreversible action. So when the plot finally does turn, it feels rushed, like it's sprinting to make up for that lost time. Now, the plot and structure, this is where everything really fell apart for me. Toward the middle and the end of the book, it felt episodic and thrown together. Like it'll be, we have to talk to this family because it's crucial to get this card. Oh, yeah, now there's a festival. Oh, market day is really important. Oh, it blows up catastrophically. Never mind, let's drop that entire plot line. We need to go to U Castle because there's something else that happened. To me, there was very little that felt like causal inevitability, and it felt like all the events were just queued up because the story needed to follow that for things to happen. And I won't even dive into the very real plot holes around the world and how it sets it up as such a cruel and punishing world, but it selects when it wants to enforce those things. Never mind ignoring some of the most public things that the characters do that have no actual repercussions. And then there's the characters, which honestly disappointed me the most. I was shocked at how underdeveloped the female characters were. Elspeth, our main character, feels more like a vessel the story happens to and needs to be there for the story to happen, rather than her actually actively making choices with agency. Ione has potential but feels more atmospheric and more like a facade to have meaning rather than actually having depth and being fully explored. The aunt, I think, is the most in-depth look that we have, and that's only because she wrote a letter that really tugs on the heartstrings. Meanwhile, male characters like Raven and Elm get clear motivations, emotional framing, and conflict. Though I think it could be said that all of them still were pretty shallow and not fully explored. I liked Jesper, I liked the Aunt, I liked Raven, but none of the characters feel particularly deep. They're functional rather than dimensional. And the book gestures at big themes: consent, power, identity, corruption. But outside of this nightmare dynamic Elspeth has with the nightmare, it doesn't really interrogate any of these themes. It touches on the ideas aesthetically, but structurally, the world and the characters doesn't reinforce the themes in any meaningful way. For me, it felt like the book wanted credit for being about these things without actually putting in the work. So, my final thoughts: there's a good book buried in here. Honestly, something dragged me through. There was still something about it that I enjoyed. I absolutely had certain parts where I was sucked in, and I liked, but overall, I don't think the book as a whole made up for its flaws. I don't regret reading it. I understand why people love it. I just don't think the ending makes up for the whole rest of the storybook. I will be reading the second one because I'm a completionist, and two, I really hope that it sticks with how the ending went. That being said, I'll close with who this is for. I think if you're a reader that really loves vibes and atmosphere more than anything else, this book will absolutely be for you. One Dark Window, 2.5 out of 5 stars for me. Cool concept, but uneven execution.